For MacKillop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. Can the Minister please update the House on the Marshall Liberal government's success in improved outcomes in our schools?
The Minister.
Thank you, sir, and it's a great honour for me to have this question from the member for MacKillop, about whom I meet regularly and talk about outcomes for students and young people across South Australia, including in schools and preschools in the MacKillop electorate. I know that the member for MacKillop is passionate about education, as indeed are members on the government side most generally. Since coming to government, there are some very, very strong indicators of improved outcomes for our children and young people in South Australia that I think every member of the South Australian community can be proud of, and I'm sure that the opposition will join us in that pride for our children and young people in the way that they're going in their schooling. NAPLAN is a useful assessment. It's certainly not the only measure of how our schools or our students are going, but it's a useful assessment. It's a standardised test that is assessed consistently across the country, across 20 domains, across 4 year levels, and identifies some critical evidence about how we are going. And historically, it is true to say that for much of the previous decade, South Australian schools hadn't been seeing the growth, hadn't been seeing the results that we would ideally desire. And so our starting point was a position where in 2017 we were last or second last in more categories than any other state out of those 20 domains, and we were last out of all states in 4 out of the 5 categories for the Year 3 students. That was our starting point upon coming to government. But, sir, I have excellent news, that in the last 4 years we've seen significant growth. Growth for students, growth for schools and growth for the state of South Australia. Indeed, the scores for our Year 3 students in South Australia over the period since has indeed seen more than double the national growth average, outstripping gains in every other state. And indeed, similarly, our Year 9 students have also been the only state where our results have gone forward. But it's tremendous to see that doubling of the national average of improvement in the Year 3 NAPLAN results. And one of the significant outcomes, of course, it's not just the broad mean across all of the domains, across all of the Year 3 students, particularly looking at how students are going at achieving higher bands and higher results. So, South Australia in 2021 achieved its highest ever percentage of students scoring in the highest band for reading in Years 3 and 5, numeracy in Years 5 and 7, and spelling in Years 3 and 5. And this, sir, I would submit as a ringing endorsement of the evidence-based approach that the government has been taking to the delivery of early years education, particularly in our schooling system. When we were in opposition, sir, in May, I think it was, of 2017, the Marshall Liberal opposition, as it was then, outlined a literacy guarantee, a stream of 10 programs of measures that we would roll out in our schools that would focus on evidence-based approaches to the teaching of literacy that would underpin what followed. Subsequently, we welcomed, I've acknowledged this before, we welcomed a trial on, originally it was going to be receptions, but then upon suggestion from me, amongst others, it was receptions in Year 1s in 50 self-selecting schools. A phonics check was trialled, and it was an excellent decision to run that trial, and I congratulated the member for Port Adelaide about that before. We had, of course, committed earlier to a rollout of all government schools, and we encouraged the former government to do that. I think it was about 4 days before the election, after 10 months of pushing, Labor agreed with this too, which I welcome because it means we have bipartisan support for the phonics 4 days before the election. Maybe it was 5. I apologise if I've gotten that wrong. It might have been a 20% difference that gave you that extra day for the people of South Australia to know that Labor had that promise. We'd committed to it in the previous May, where all government schools would have this phonics check. And what we have seen that phonics check identify is not just students who are slipping through the gaps. It's also been a wake-up call for many teachers about ensuring that they have the best practice available. And what that has meant is that the check has identified certainly students who are slipping through the gaps, but over the last 4 years, such significant improvement from 2018 to 2021, from 43% of our Year 1 students being at the mark to 67% of our students being at the mark. There's still further to go. There's still more work to do. But these students are getting the basics of reading right. They're doing an outstanding job in our schools. I congratulate all the teachers, all the education staff who've had such an integral role in improving these results, these outcomes for South Australian children.